This week on the agenda, up, up and away. We're at the Farnborough International Air Show to check out the current state of the aviation industry. The Farnborough International Air Show is one of Europe's largest, with more than 1,500 exhibitors filling 100,000 square metres of space. And while much of the talk at any such event is around the new and the innovative, much of the interest here is in the future of commercial aviation, with US market giant Boeing facing increasing competition from the likes of Airbus and China's relatively new entrant to the market, Comac. I spoke to Matteo Peraldo, aviation expert at the global consultant AlixPartners, to get his take on this year's events. Product launches, big orders, amazing flying displays. What's the standout for you? What do you think is going to be the highlight of the Farnborough International Air Show?
I'm afraid that this year is going to be a bit like it happened in the past 2 years, a bit a different type of air show. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the air show were all about new product, all about new order. Everybody was getting excited by announcing 100 aircraft order. This year, the focus is way more on supply chain. And again, 10 years ago, you were coming to the air show trying to understand the next decade, the long-term future of the industry, which of the different aircraft would have emerged as a winner. Now we are very clear about how the industry is going to look like in 10 years. The order book are at record level. We have 15,000 aircraft in the backlog, so we have over 9-year production cover, but we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. And the uncertainty is really in the short term, in next week, next month, and in the coming year. So a bit a different air show, but still a lot of excitement.
Well, one of the big stories that everybody's talking about is Boeing's woes. I mean, from big fines, regulatory issues, in search of a new CEO. They've got a big presence here, though, although they're not going to be participating in the flying displays. I mean, what's your take on where things stand for them and where things stand more broadly in the industry?
Yeah, I think Boeing, the industry need a strong Boeing, is absolutely a must. If you, in the commercial aerospace, Airbus and Boeing are going to dominate the market for the coming 10 years. There are emerging players like Comac, potentially Embraer, but we are more talking about something happening in the 30s rather than in the next 10 years. So absolutely the industry need a strong Boeing, a Boeing that is able to drive the industry and to a production, stable production rate that could be a guidance for the supply chain.
So the industry needs Boeing, but time frame, they've got to sort their house out, don't they?
Yeah, now they are moving with Spirit, which is a move to get more control, and they announced that they're going to slow down production rate to get rid of the travel and work, which all go in the right direction. So I think they are doing the right move, but timing is of essence here, and I think we are hopefully we are expecting stabilization of production for Boeing in the coming weeks.
Well, things are less dramatic for another titan of the air passenger segment, Airbus. But the industry itself, it has been facing huge challenges. I mean, there's a lot to think about. Skills shortages, supply chain issues, commercial jet backlogs, defence budgets squeezed. There's all of these things going on. What's the good news, Matteo?
Yeah, there is no doubt that the industry has been challenged by supply chain, labor. The good news is that if you step back, the fundamentals are still very solid. The commercial aerospace is here to stay. Backlog is very high. Aftermarket, if you look at the entire portfolio, the aftermarket is probably the bright side. Has been exceptionally hot aftermarket over the past years, both in terms of volume and growth. Have been growing 30% year on year over the past years, and has been the key driver for M&A activity. We expect that while the growth is going to slow down, of course, over the coming years, it will remain the most interesting segment in the industry.
And there are some interesting newer players on the scene, aren't there? You mentioned a couple of them. So let's talk a little bit more about China's Comac, who are also here at Farnborough. How do you see that market shaping up overall?
Yeah, I believe Comac and overall China is going to be an absolutely credible player for the next generation of narrowbody. I'm a bit more skeptical about the current generation. I think they will have a certain level of success in China, but it's going to be difficult for them to grow outside China. And besides Comac, a lot of new stand, a lot of new name, urban mobility, supersonic. So it's really an exciting time for the industry. If you are an aerospace supplier, on the other end, most of this innovation materialize 10 years plus from now. So I think if you still need to bet where your business will come from, you still have to look at Airbus and Boeing as the main source of activity for the coming years.
But coming back to Comac, I just want to pick up on the point you made there. You said that you really see their growth being quite China specific. Is that because it's such a big market? What's your reasoning?
The Comac 919 is competing directly with the Airbus A320neo and the 737 MAX. Both aircraft have incredible reliability and they set the bar extremely high for a newcomer. So it's going to be extremely difficult for Comac to meet the airline expectation in terms of reliability. Airbus and Boeing did an incredible job in improving the reliability of those aircraft, and they really raised the bar very high for a newcomer. This doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it will take longer, and it's going to be much easier to achieve this level of reliability in a small region of the world, in China, where they can have part for the aftermarket available at every airport. It will be more complex to scale. So this is, in my view, is going to require 10 to 20 years and probably the next generation of aircraft.
And where do you see China? Where does China sit in terms of the aviation industry?
No, China has been an incredible engine for growth over the past decades. It's still emerging from COVID. I think the volume of flight there is not yet fully recovered, especially the international flight. But China is definitely going to be a very important hub in the future of aerospace.
We're seeing a lot of tech innovation here, particularly at this Farnborough International Air Show. There's lots of prototypes for electric takeoff and landing aircraft. How do you think that these kind of innovations are going to shape our future?
Oh, I'm super excited to see what the different companies are bringing here to the air show. I didn't have the time yet, so to look at the different prototype, but this is very exciting. I'm a big believer that on a short haul, electrification is going to play a key role in the coming years. Urban mobility is going to happen. Maybe not with the time that everybody is expecting, so it's maybe again more something 5 years plus, but there is so much innovation in the industry at this moment, and defense is driving a lot of that.
Do you worry though about cost? Because a lot of this new innovation is expensive. Is it targeting a limited market?
Yeah, it's targeting a limited market, but a market with economics can sustain the cost of this innovation. I actually believe that innovation in certain area of the market is going to be critical to reduce costs and improve efficiency. Look, for instance, at the aftermarket, MRO. The fleet keep growing, and there is a very challenging shortage of technicians. So without technology, without the breakthrough that digital and technology can bring to this part of the industry, it's going to be very difficult to meet the demand. So we are desperately looking for technology and digital to improve efficiency and allow the industry to support the aircraft over the next 10 years.
It sounds like you're also desperately looking for people who've
Absolutely,
got that
yeah.
skill set. I mean, look, some of the technology we've got here, the increase of machine learning, artificial intelligence, so they're not going to take all your jobs.
No, they're not going to take our job, but we need people.
It's very manual. A lot of it's manual.
There is a lot of manual activity. There are a lot of inefficiency. It doesn't completely remove the need for people. So hiring talent is one of the key challenges for the industry, and again, especially in the aftermarket. But there are so many inefficiencies that can be removed, so much manual work that can be easily addressed with digital and can be further improved with artificial intelligence. And the last piece that digital can play is accelerate the training of new hire. There is a big generational change going on in the industry, and having the right tool to train the newcomer, the new joiner, is going to be critical to ensure safety and quality.
So need technology, need skills, need the people, but another big theme here is sustainability, or that remains a pretty big challenge in the world, and also for this industry. But then I'm seeing things like air freight, their greenhouse gas emissions. Air freight greenhouse gas emissions, they are up 25% since 2019. And so in this post-pandemic economy, we have consumers who are so much more demanding. They want rapid shipping on everything that they bought online. Can this industry ever really be green?
I think the industry set for itself very challenging target on emission and on sustainability. A big portion of achieving this target was new aircraft, greener aircraft. Now, with the slowdown on delivery, I think the industry will need to rethink the approach on how to achieve the target that's set for itself. Sustainable fuel is going to play a key role, especially given that we are keeping an older flight fleet flying for longer, but we need a different solution to help on sustainability.
Are you saying that the industry has overpromised and under-delivered on their green goals?
I'm saying that the target was very ambitious, and the slowdown on delivery is not going to help to achieve the target.
What's your outlook for aviation and aerospace? I mean, where's the growth going to come from? Is it Europe? Is it the Middle East? Is it China?
The growth is coming everywhere. I think people still love to fly. If you look at airlines rebounded after COVID in a very healthy way. The backlog for commercial aerospace is all-time high. There is all those new exciting innovation about urban mobility, advanced aerial mobility, to fly even more. No, you will no longer go from London, from the center of London to Heathrow with a cab or with a subway. You will fly on an electric vehicle, the same from Manhattan to JFK. So I think people are going to fly even more, there are markets that today are untapped from aviation that will become accessible, and people will still fly around the world. So I'm absolutely bullish for the future of this industry, for the future of aviation and commercial aerospace.
Matteo, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Now, much of the buzz here is around what many think is the future of air travel. Electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, just like this one, capable of short, eco-friendly trips that could revolutionize short-haul travel. One company hoping to take advantage of the growing desire for this new tech is Lilium, a German company founded in 2015 by 4 engineering PhD students. I spoke to Chief Commercial Officer Sebastian Borel. I've heard you described as a taxi startup, but that doesn't really cover it, does it? So tell us a little bit about what's really exciting about what you're doing right now.
Well, thank you. The taxi term is not something I like very much. Number one, because obviously it's flying, but also because we are trying to connect cities with each other, right? Not staying only in the urban areas. We're trying to develop a new mode of transportation for people to fly in a sustainable way, and between cities, not within the same urban environment. We actually have a range of 175 kilometers, which can reduce the emission, and with battery improvement, we'll be able to increase that range tremendously. So we want to create a new solution for mobility, and train has been working in the past, but it takes a lot of resources on the ground, takes years to develop. This is where we believe the future, simply because it's zero operating emission, and you can land vertically, which gets you the closest possible to your end destination.
Who are your customers going to be? Where are they? And who's going to use this service?
So I could give you names, but I think what's important to understand is our commercial approach to selling our aircraft. Number one, we believe that there is an existing market that requires that aircraft right away. It's the general and business aviation market. People that are flying helicopters or small private jets want to have a sustainable solution to their journey today. And so when we have actually approached the market, we had a really, really welcome reception by all of those people buying jets or flying their own helicopters. So we started to actually sell that aircraft to private individuals and to charter services companies that are taking you from A to B, usually from your real estate to your end destination. So we are entering the market with what we call the premium segment, and then we scale up to what we call the mass market, which is a scheduled service for the aircraft. So you can buy a ticket and you'll be able to go, like I said earlier, from A to B by just purchasing the ticket. But our first customers are premium customers. They are just dying to get a new mode of transportation. It's also a lot safer than the current mode of transportation, which is helicopter. We are certifying the aircraft 10 to the minus 9, meaning one possible accident within a billion flight, instead of 10 to the minus 7 for a helicopter. So a lot safer as well.
But if you're talking about getting people out of trains,
yes,
then, and also being the future of mobility, aren't you targeting people like me, people who commute?
Absolutely, and we've just done a survey, by the way, a global survey on the adoption of our aircraft. And very interestingly, 70% of the people, for example, in the UK, are looking for a new mode of transport, which is sustainable, right? They are looking, and
that's just in the UK.
And just in the UK, and globally speaking, you have roughly speaking the same results. And if you're looking specifically at eVTOL, our aircraft, electric vertical takeoff and landing, they have 60% already adoption before it's even flying. So we believe that once people see it and experience it, they're going to absolutely love it.
So when then do you expect the business to take off and to be able to lure all those car commuters onto your services?
So we will introduce our aircraft starting in 2026. Like I said at the beginning, it will be very much in the premium areas of the world. So if you know Monaco to Nice, or maybe New York, going to the Hamptons, London here to go to Oxford. But eventually you're going to go into places that are more dense and where you'll be able to buy a ticket. For example, the Greater Bay Area in China, where you have, roughly speaking, I believe 85 million people between Hong Kong, Guangzhou, Zhuhai, Shenzhen, and the rest. And that would be a perfect place for our aircraft, because we have the range, I believe, between Hong Kong and Guangzhou, it's about 120 kilometers. That means that you will be able to fly the distance tomorrow in 20 minutes. You will be able to go from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, if you have, of course, an immigration center, which will be one of the topics that we're going to have in China.
That's one of the big question marks, isn't it? The range. Another one is the cost. Yes. So what are you doing to reassure people, or to give us reassuring answers to those things?
Well, I'm glad you bring that point, because we actually worked very hard at Lilium to nail down what we call the unit economic of the aircraft, making sure that the hourly cost of the aircraft is attractive to our operator, because they can sell then the ticket with healthy margins. You'll be looking, roughly speaking, at $2 per seat kilometer. So if you're flying a distance of 100 kilometers, it will be $200. That's at, almost entry into service.
That's more expensive than a train.
It is more expensive. Well, if you look at the first class train, and if you have to take the taxi from the end to the bottom. So yes, it's slightly more expensive. We're going to have to drop that, but from an entry point, it's really good. If you actually think of smartphones or the first EV in the world, like the Roadster from Tesla, they were very expensive. But then the cost went down as the production ramps up and as we're introducing more technologies to it. So we're hoping to bring that down to a lower state. And we think we can achieve that in the 2030s easily to be able to attract even more people and making sure that they will get an affordable ticket.
Well, analysts are putting big money on this industry, aren't they? The market for electrical vehicle takeoff and landing is expected to be worth $57 billion, and that's just by 2035. To get there, it's going to mean partnerships, it's going to mean collaborations. So who's your dream co-pilot?
Well, first of all, I'd like to go back to Lilium business model, because a lot of different companies have different approach to that. We are simply selling the aircraft and doing the aftermarket, right? So if you think about this, we need to have the right operators where we can sell to the premium segment, but also scaling up to a scheduled service. We also need maintenance partners to make sure that you can actually repair that aircraft when there is a part going down. We have to have the digital software to make it work, and we have to have the ground infrastructure to make sure we can get our aircraft to land. So it's a variety of things that you have to do. It's an ecosystem that you have to prepare. On the aircraft side, we can work on silo, but for the rest, for the operational side, we have to work with many partners. But we have already struck many agreements on the support and services side to make sure we can serve that aircraft when it gets into service. We're also putting in place what's called a Part 145, which is a maintenance IP agreement, so people can actually maintain our aircraft, the parts we're going to send them. And from an infrastructure point of view, we have announced a lot of different partnerships. The first one was with Ferrovial, Urban V. We have done a lot of those where we have investors willing to come and just invest in the ground. And I can talk about the ground requirements for aircraft. It's actually not that much.
You've also got a new partnership in China. So tell us a little bit about that market, why it's exciting.
Well, it was very important for us to look into the Chinese market, because it's roughly speaking going to be at least 25% of the market globally speaking. You have a lot of course, major cities. The distances I just mentioned earlier, of the Greater Bay, for example, you can reach out 85 million. But you can look also in Sichuan, you can look in Hainan, you can look in different type of places. You have that requirement, you have that demand. It's equally important to look at the supply chain. China has offered a lot of good technologies. I don't have to talk about BYD, I don't have to talk about CATL. They're amazing companies, and we know that the future will be with Chinese suppliers as well. So it's very important. And when we went to China, and I actually went personally to talk to Shenzhen government and open an office with Boeing district, it was very, very absolutely amazing what we had experienced in terms of how fast they can go to attract what they call the low altitude economy, and making sure that we can be part of that story as well. So great partnership that we have with the Shenzhen government. We also have obviously Tencent as a shareholder, which helps out. And so we believe that China will become eventually, what I say eventually is because the type certification will have to be validated in China. That may take a bit of time, but eventually will become a very key market for us.
You mentioned Boeing districts there. So how is that working? You said you're excited about the technology and the enthusiasm. But tell us a little bit more about the timeline and what it means for jobs. So
first of all, we have already created a legal entity out of China in the Boeing district. We expect that center to be the headquarters for APAC, not only China, the entire Asia Pacific, for the sales of our aircraft and for the aftermarket of our aircraft. And eventually we'll also look at R&D and procurement in that office. We'll start that office end of the year, early next year, to make sure that we start really the journey in China, selling. You mentioned partnerships, making sure we have the right partnerships for our aircraft, working with the government, very important to make sure the CAC is on board with our validation of type certification. And so we have a great journey in front of us in China, but it was very important to first decide where we go, how we do it, and with whom. And Boeing District has a lot of innovation. We're talking about battery recycling. They have tons of experience with that industry, and we think that's going to be a perfect combination with it. You talked a little bit about the opportunity in China more broadly. I think you said 25% of your market could come from China. So talk us through the potential you see in China. So when we look at the city pairs, right? We look at city pairs because what we want to do, as I said earlier, is connect cities with each other. And when we look at the city pairs in China, with the range increasing, right? Because our batteries that you see here on the side of the fuselage, they're going to get better and better in density. We know that. We know that the industry is already working on solid state batteries. We're looking at 500 watt-hour per kilogram. And therefore, every type, any kind of improvement you get on the batteries, you'll get it in the range improvement. So if you look at a city pair connection around 300 kilometers between cities in China, that's where you come up with, roughly speaking, 25% of the market. It's absolutely gigantic. We're going to face, to be very frank with you, we're going to face difficulties in China that we don't have elsewhere, mostly probably on the airspace side. Most of the airspace in China is tightly controlled, and we're going to have to make sure that we get from the airspace owner, which is usually military, the permits to fly. That's where we believe that working with the Greater Bay, and Shenzhen in particular, will help us bring that innovation into the entire mainland. So
having that people-to-people connection.
Absolutely.
Because there are so many elements to what you do, and different partnerships, you mentioned the suppliers, the manufacturers, all of those things, you do face challenges in this space. I mean, what do you think the main roadblock has been, the main challenges to growing the business, to getting ready for market? Is it the technology? Is it the cost? Is it people's mindset? Like, what do you mean I'm going to commute like this way?
So I actually believe that people are going to be thrilled by the experience they're going to have. It's not like a helicopter. It doesn't tilt, it doesn't vibrate. It's zero operating emission, and it very much feels like you're entering into regular aircraft. At least our aircraft is that way. You enter, you turn right, you go into your seat, and you sit down and you take off. So I think the adoption will go very quickly. So I'm not concerned about that at all whatsoever. Technology, we've done a lot of work the past 5 years in R&D, in the battery packs, in the propulsion system. So I think it's behind us. The most of the heavy work is behind us. Of course, the flight testing campaign is always a bit of a unknown, and we're going to have to go through this. But I'm not that afraid. I think it's what you said earlier. For that market to really become big, we're going to have to drop the cost. And if you look at the yields that you generate in a train, we talked about that earlier, is $0.5 per seat kilometer, and we are 2, right? So we're going to have to go lower and lower and lower in the years to come to make sure that industry is not only for the premium people, but it's for everyone.
We've talked about China, Europe, the Middle East. How do you see Lilium evolving?
So I think it would be obviously a global market, but we're going to have to carefully introduce the aircraft in some areas to make sure that we do the right servicing of our aircraft, right? You want to make sure it's a new aircraft that we bring the support. There are other markets that are absolutely tremendous. We have an MOU with Azul in Brazil. There is 1,200 helicopter flights a day into Sao Paulo. So just if you remove those 1,200 and replace it with a Lilium jet, those are hundreds of our jet that we can put in place. So you have those kind of areas where it's a very mature market and you can take over very rapidly. Of course, the US will become very big, right, because of the number of people that can afford it and because of the cities and congestion that you find. But we're going to see, I would say, an expansion taking over the world from Europe to Middle East and then going east and west, hopefully, of Europe.
Can't wait to get in there and have a flight.
Absolutely.
Sebastian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find more agenda content on CGTN Europe's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube channels. Until next time, goodbye.
The most interesting questions.
Are there other living beings beyond Earth?
Will man or machine be in charge?
Great question.
Always have more than one answer.
Well, hold on, let me just draw up a list.
And always come from more than one person.
That's where the credibility lies.
The concept of having a machinery which is alive and evolving didn't wait for us.
The end of inequality of incomes and wealth around the world, can you imagine how difficult that is at the moment to achieve?
Every episode, Stephen Cole, Murray Beveridge, and some of the brightest minds out there shed light on the answers to some of the most intriguing questions.
There are two ways of looking at this.
Machines can't really discriminate between civilian and military targets.
The Answers Project.
Maybe we need to just look at this in a bit more detail.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
The Answers Project, a new podcast from CGTN Europe.